Hello, friends. My name is Shedrack Akintayo. I'm a developer relations engineer at platform.sh. I am also a part-time community builder in Lagos, Nigeria, basically in Africa generally. So for my talk today, I'm going to be talking about this is based on my entirely based on my experience building communities in like a region like Africa. So understanding and approaching developer communities in smaller region. So let's get started. So, like I said, I'm a developer relations engineer at Platform SH, and during my free time, I write technical articles for popular um, blogs like Smashing Magazine, Log Rocket, Container Journal, etc. I like to call myself a community expert and a developer relations strategist. So let's just get into the talk. So the way I like to give my talks, I like to give my talk like a conversation. So um, you are seeing the title, you are wondering smaller region, what does he mean by that? So what do I mean by that generally, what smaller regions are? And smaller region basically is not what you're thinking. It's not a very small region particularly. It's not like okay, a particular part of the world that is small geographically. Nah, it's because I tag these regions small because they lack certain facilities, they lack financial support, they lack access to information, and they lack opportunities. This is like the traits I like to call a smaller region. Yeah, they all have this certain characteristics. So now let's give an example of smaller regions. Yeah, we've seen the characteristics they have, and what regions do we have in the world that I would tag as a smaller region? So Africa is really small region compared to the Americas, to Europe. The Middle East is really small, and Oceania, which is most of the time the smallest. These are like the regions of the world that I like to tag as smaller regions. Now, okay, so you're asking, okay, why should we care about how we approach these regions? Why don't we just use the same method of approach we've used in Europe, we've used in the US and various parts of America? What's so special about these regions? Well, I'm here to basically educate every single one of you watching this talk on how to really approach this region, which because it's an entirely different method from how it is in various parts of Europe and the US and different parts of America, South and North. So why should you care? Now, the reason why you should care about this region is because there's an availability, a very large availability of undiscovered tech talent. There is it is a whole different market, different from what you're used to, and diversity is very important in every single industry. So, as a tech industry, we should be encouraging diversity. So, why I would say you should care about this region is because of these three things: availability of undiscovered tech talents. We need a really is a large pool of tech talents that are really undiscovered and unheard in these particular regions. It's a whole different market from what you used to. So you get to learn more stuff about different type of people, a different market, a different community, then diversity, which is like one of the most important reasons why we should or you should care about the smaller regions. Now, I've managed to convince you why you should care about these regions. Yeah. Now, so the next question that would probably be in your minds or your minds is how do we understand these smaller regions? Okay, we know that it's different from what we are used to. We know that there's a large pool of talent here. We know that we need to encourage diversity more. So, how do we understand this smaller region? It's pretty simple to do it actually, and every single thing I'm going to be giving in this talk is based on my experience interacting with with region and coming from this region. Surveys very important before you take a DevRel program to this particular side of the world, to this smaller region. You need to do a survey to understand who your demographic are, to understand the kind of people that you would be interacting with, which leads us to the next, which is interviews. Now, one of the most successful way of doing this is interviewing community leaders in this region. You get to know what it's like, building a community in these smaller regions. You get to know the pain points that you need to take note of when trying to build a community in this region. Very important. Now, one fast way of also penetrating into this region is sponsoring tech events in this region. Like I said initially at the beginning of the talk, I said these regions are called, I tag them as smaller because they lack financial support, they lack financial resources compared to the bigger regions we have where tech is really, really booming. So a way you can really, really have access to this region is sponsoring tech events in those regions. When you sponsor a tech event um in these regions, you have access to a pool of different communities, different people. You can also go there to talk to individuals that are part of these communities in this region. Now, another very important aspect of understanding is hiring from those regions. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's difficult to hire from these regions because of certain compliance, data privacy and compliance laws. But when that is out of the case, when that's you figured out how to bypass, how to still do this particular hiring, it's really important to go to these regions and hire people from there. Yeah, so thankful. We're really thankful for the way remote work has has taken shape, and we can really work from any part of the world these days. So hiring from those regions give you an access to the talent there, and to understand how the talent there and the people there think. Now, attending events held in those regions, so you necessarily do not have to sponsor all the time. You necessarily do not have to hire to understand this region. You can just look for one of like the biggest tech events happening in this particular regions. Okay, let's go there. Let's take our DevRel team there. Let's take our marketing team there. Let's take um um whatever team we want to take there, and just attend the region and blend in like locals of that particular region. That way you'd be able to have meaningful conversations and understand how people in this regions think, and understand how to connect more with them. It's really, really important. So these particular ways I've mentioned are one of like the most effective ways to really understand how things in these regions work and how to approach them and understand them generally. Now, I've convinced you, I've mentioned how you can understand it. Now, after understanding, you're probably wondering, how do we actually approach them with our via our DevRel program? Yeah. So this is based on my experience, like I said, one and this way, these ways I'm going to mention now are like based on my experience, and let's just see how far it takes us generally. Now, so how about we? So generally, how about we use Africa as a case study, because it makes more sense, right? I'm from Africa, yeah. So it will make more sense if I actually say things based on my experience. Personally, I love to give talks that are based on my experience. So how about we use Africa as a case study? Makes more sense generally for me. Now let's talk about Africa. Now, Africa has a population as of 2018, it's way more now, of 1.3 billion people. It is the largest black continent in the world. It has a very large and untapped developer ecosystem, surplus talent, and there's enough space for growth. So, Africa is like a gold mine of talent, and a really, really large and untapped developer ecosystem for DevRel teams all across the world. Now, I'm going to just give an example of successful DevRel programs that I've experienced and I've seen prosper in Africa. The Google Developer Groups, Google Developer Experts, Google Developer Student Club. Google has figured out how to approach Africa generally. They are one of the first organizations I've seen that really took their time to send out employees to come and understand how things work here in Africa. That's one of the reasons why I'm giving them this honorable mention. Then Cloudinary Media Developer Experts. Cloudinary is an image processing company in San Francisco, I think. They've been doing really well, trying to penetrate into Africa. Facebook developer circles, they have as much influence as Google over the developer ecosystems here. Auth0 Ambassador, Kotlin User Group, which is still under Google, GitLab Heroes, Figma, and GitHub Campus Experts. Now, these DevRel programs, I've found they've really understood how to approach developer relations here in Africa. They've been able to make meaningful relationships. They've been able to get meaningful connection with the community here. So that's one of the reasons why I gave these examples. Now, the question you're wondering, yeah, I think everybody's really wondering, even I'm wondering, why are these programs successful? What did they do? What's so special about these programs that it was successful in this part of the world? Well, I'm going to make a rundown of that pretty soon. So let's go straight into that. Now, they followed a few and a couple of steps that I'm going to be mentioning. The first is they recognized and understood their target market. Yeah, they made sure they understood the demographic. They followed the method I mentioned in understanding these regions, surveys, interviews, hiring, attending tech events, sponsoring tech events, etc. So they recognized that this particular region has what we are looking for. Very untapped, fresh talent, have a very different market that would see how our product would play there. So they recognize this market and then understood how to approach this market. Really, really important. Now, they partnered with already popular community leaders, which gains more traction for them. Now, when you partner with people that are like influenced, like let's say they're influencers in that particular community or leaders in that particular community, it gives you a boost. You do not need to go through the stress of starting from like the scratch. The community is basically going to come to you basically when they partner with these popular community leaders. They sponsored large developer communities in the continent. For example, here are some like really really popular and large developer communities in Africa: Four Loop, Concatenate, and the Open Source Festival. Then they also hired folks from the region. Very, very important, because once you've made them, when you've made the community members part of you, you get to understand how they think. You get to understand, hear from them directly on how things are generally in that region. And another way to foster adoption of their products in this particular region is they hosted hackathons that let developers use and leverage their technologies. Very, very important, because that way developers become very familiar with your technology. If your technology is great, if your product is great, they do evangelism for you by themselves without you spending any marketing budget. Very, very important. These steps I've mentioned, these points I've mentioned are really, really crucial and very, very important if you want to succeed in these particular regions. Now, how can you also approach these communities? So I've told you my experience. I've told you how Google, how Facebook, how Auth0, how these various developer relations teams have approached this community. So how can you approach these communities? So don't just take from these communities, give also. I've seen various DevRel programs go to these communities and take from them, gather their insights without actually giving to these communities. It's just not ideal, because you cannot. There's no sense of trust between you and these communities anymore if you do not give back to these communities. So it's very, very essential. It's very, very important that as you are taking from these communities, you are getting insights from this community, you are doing market research from these communities. It's very, very important to also give back to these communities. Examples of giving back is sponsoring tech events in these communities. Very, very important. Doing hackathons where people win prizes, very, very important. That way it creates a sense of connection. It creates a symbiotic relationship between yourself as a DevRel team or and the community members generally. So it's very, very important to not just take but also give back to these communities. Now, invest in non-exploitative developer programs. I'm very, very particular about this particular point, because I've seen this happen times and over again, where serious DevRel teams come to Africa, come and get, do market research, do various things, exploit developers and communities in this particular region just because they are small, just because they don't have a voice, exploit them and go away. So if you bring in any DevRel program to these smaller communities because of they are small, they don't have a voice, that's very wrong. So instead, spend more time investing in non-exploitative developer programs, give back to them, help them even get better, help their voices to be heard. Very, very important. Now, shine light and provide opportunities on the local talents in these communities. Like I mentioned earlier, hiring from these regions is very, very important, because that way you are making sure that the local talents in these communities are given the global stage to share their knowledge, share their ideas, and you're also giving them a voice. So it's very, very important to shine light. That's reward your champions generally and provide opportunities on the local talent in these communities. Very, very important. Next up is hire these community members if you can. It's I know it's a hiring is a hassle when you have to do it internationally. I know how much of a hassle hiring is, but when you get the time to figure out how to do this, it's very, very important to hire these community members, because that way you've made them a part of you, you've given them a voice. Very, very important, because these communities are small and unheard of, they're untapped. So doing all of these will say, oh, okay, when company A hires from a particular part of Africa, and they see how well they do generally, how well they are, how good they are, and they begin to talk about it on maybe various platforms. Other companies will try to emulate it, because I mean everybody wants to win the talent war, yeah. Everybody wants to do that. So it's very important. That way you are giving more visibility to that region, you're giving more visibility to the talents in those regions. Very, very important. Now speak their language. Now, what do I mean by speak their language? I'm not talking about learning how to speak Swahili, which is like a language here in Africa, or learn how to speak Yoruba, which is a also a local language in Africa, specifically Nigeria. I'm saying that you should understand how these people, what excites them, what this region, people in this community members in this region, what excites them, what gets them going, and try to do the same thing. That's what I mean by speaking their language. It's very, very important to be this creates a sense of connection, a sense of trust and empathy between you and these communities and these regions. Very, very important. Now, while I've given tips on how to approach this, on how you can approach this region. So I just want to quickly, to round up my talk, I want to give some key takeaways that I've that I've experienced over the years, and I also want to share with every single person in this that's watching this talk. Don't just throw financial resources everywhere. Plan and recognize where needs what. Very, very important. I know a lot of DevRel teams today have hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing budgets to do whatever they want, to try to create adoption for whatever product they are evangelizing for. It's nice, really great. It's every dream of a DevRel team to have enough budget to do whatever, execute every whatever idea they want to execute. But it's really important to understand that you cannot just throw financial resources everywhere to be able to achieve your goal. It would fail woefully, and you would not be able to explain to upper management why you have not they've not gotten any return on investment. So when you're approaching this region, do not just come with the idea that okay, they lack financial resources. Let's do courses here, let's do give swags here, let's sponsor events here. Even though these are nice things to do, you need to understand that you don't just do it all the time. You need to plan, strategize, and recognize what parts of this region needs what. Very, very important. So because investments in DevRel programs take a lot of time to even to get feedback, to get any form of return on investment. It takes a lot of time. So just keep yourself within your budget, understand what needs what. So when time to explain to upper management, I'm pretty sure everybody that is developer relations person watching this talk knows why explaining to upper management how our program is going is very, very important, and how much of a stress it is. So um don't just throw the financial resources there. Plan, recognize where needs was. When it's time to explain, and it's easier for you to really be able to show where you are investing in and where you are not investing in. Very important. Now, recognizing developer communities in smaller regions and paying attention to them is very important, as it encourages diversity. I mean, a lot of we've been talking a lot about diversity. It's very, very important. It's not just a buzzword that is going on in the tech industry. It's very, very important in every single aspect of the tech industry, even in developer relations. Recognizing developer communities, these smaller developer communities, giving them a voice, sponsoring them, paying attention to them is very, very important. So they feel welcomed in various parts of the world and bigger regions. It's very, very important, which is why I'm really, really grateful and honored for DevRel to bring me on this talk. It's very, very to come and give this talk. I really, really appreciate the gesture. So that's one thing, very, very important, diversity. The next thing is measure and gather metrics. Use those metrics to improve your DevRel process. This is not just for the smaller regions. Generally, this is just in my experience. Yeah, measure and gather metrics. Very, very important. Everybody, managers, upper management wants to see data. Data informs decisions. So use those metrics, the data that you've gotten, to improve your DevRel process when approaching these regions, or when approaching any region, or approaching any problem generally. Data and metrics are very, very important. Now, ask questions and get feedback from the community. So one thing I used to always tell DevRel teams that I'm like talking to general, I'm consulting for, is always listen to the community. Very, very important to listen to the community, because that way you need to know what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right. This would improve your overall development process. So asking the right questions and getting feedback from the community makes it very, very makes your work much easier. And for in terms of the community members, it creates a sense of trust, because they believe that every single word matters. Every single person word matters. Very, very important. And I've come to the end of my talk. Thank you so much for listening. I hope like you've been able to learn like a couple of things. And I also, of course, learned a lot preparing this talk. You can follow me on like Twitter if you have any extra questions at coda_black. I also have a personal blog where I write a couple of technical things, shady.xyz. So thank you so much for coming to my talk, and have a nice day.